JAKIB back here with Young Birds 365. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Ed Kracz, to jump in with us for a solid half hour here to round out our Monday edition of Birds 365. IDK, I saw you wrote in your latest post on SI.com that Kaylee Ringo not signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. Over the last several years, the second round picks have become the ones that have most often been the largest group of not signing because they try to get language in there. The first round picks and they're all slotted in and don't seem to be near as hard to sign as they used to be. You have camp holdouts, guys not show up and whatever. First round, not nearly as big a deal as it used to be. And the second round, it's become the debatable. Kaylee Ringo was a fourth round pick. Why haven't the Eagles gotten him done yet?
Yeah, listen, I don't think it's time to panic or anything, right? I mean, he's only one of two. I just think it's curious that, the Eagles typically do a good job of getting their rookies signed pretty quickly. In fact, we saw them do it with Jalen Carter and Tanner McKee and Moro Ojomo. They were signed before the first snap of rookie minicamp back in early May. They got 6 of their 7 signed, but Ringo's still out there unsigned, and we're down less than a month now before camp, and he's only one of 2 fourth-round picks that haven't signed. Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle that the Indianapolis Colts took right after Ringo, he remains unsigned, but why he's not signed.
Ringo hasn't signed.
No, and Ringo hasn't signed. So those 2 fourth-rounders have not signed. I just think it's curious that, he's still out there. I don't know what the holdup could be, but again, there's still 29 days or 30 days before camp begins. I think it's more concerning that you mentioned the first round picks. Bryce Young's not signed. CJ Stroud's not signed. Anthony Richardson's not signed. I mean, these are franchise quarterbacks that are still unsigned. So, that's something to watch as well. I just think Ringo will get signed and he'll be in here. It's just curious, and we'll probably get to the bottom of it once camp begins, is what took a little longer than might have been expected.
Yeah, the wiggle room, where there is wiggle room, it's always quarterbacks in the first round. Second round, there's usually top of the second. If you remember, Landon Dickerson signed 2 days before camp as a rookie, something like that. I'd have to look it up exactly. Yeah. And then top of the fourth round, which is where Kaylee is. There's a little bit of wiggle room. It usually has to do with offset language, which is, I always say, it's the equivalent of an old married couple arguing just to argue, because it doesn't matter. It never comes into play, but they argue for the sake of arguing. It wouldn't surprise me now, because everybody's on vacation, if he doesn't sign till right before camp. But he will sign. Yeah. I would not worry about it. He will sign, and he'll be in for the start of training camp. Those are the spots, though. Quarterbacks, as you mentioned at the top of the draft, they're always early second round, early fourth round. It's a little bit more wiggle room, but I mean, it'll get done. I wouldn't worry. It's not the old days where legitimate holdouts happen all the time. And those first round picks, those quarterbacks, they have some more issues, because quarterbacks obviously hold a lot of power as opposed to other positions. Now, we were talking about our top 25 list as we're going through it now, Ed Kracz. Number 21, and I always have a problem with this because kickers aren't real football players, but man, Jake Elliott's good. How do you weigh that when you're going down it? Because if you're just going by, hey, who's the best at their particular position on this team, Jake probably belongs even higher than that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we already know, like, he's the best ping pong player and the best golfer. I mean, the guy's just an athlete, so many different things. But I weigh it as he's a very important piece to the Eagles, winning and losing. He called on to make some big kicks during the course of the season, and, he delivers. More often than not, Jake Elliott delivers. So I don't have a problem putting him, in my top 25. Don't think I'd ever put him in the top 20, But I think the 20 to 25 range is just fine for a kicker as good as Jake Elliott.
And we talk a lot about the devaluing of positions in the National Football League. Running back certainly across the entire National Football League. Linebacker specifically at the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that the kickers devalued across the National Football League is a mistake. That the Eagles are in a good position because they've got one of the best kickers in the National Football League in Jake Elliott. I think it should be compensated significantly because you're in a no-win situation. When you kick a 61-yard field, you're expected to make it. When you miss a 45-yard field goal, cut him, get him out, send him on a rail out of town. It's not win-win. It's borderline lose-lose. Or lose, nobody cares when you make the field goal.
Yeah.
I think it's completely unfair.
I wonder if we were doing a Baltimore list, how high would Tucker go? That I'd have to look at the team, but man, they're a good team. But he'd be pretty stinking high if it were me.
Should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, when a drive stalls out, on the other side of the 50, it's great to have a weapon that you can bring in, like Tucker and even Elliott. But listen. A kicker needs to make all of his PATs too, right? I mean, I think Elliott was perfect on those last year or 2 years ago. I mean, I
think he was 50. He made 51 out of 53 last year. The 51 was a franchise record, so he did miss a couple, I believe. I have to double check. But he's really good. He's really good.
Did he really miss some more bad snaps and/or blocks?
Yeah, well, that's another thing. You have to look at. Sometimes, it's a battery thing, and Rick Lovato is a big part of it. Aaron Cepas is a big part of it. They talk about his holding. Now, when you talk about a punter's holding first, it's similar to talk about a receiver's blocking. It's all right, great. But, you got to be a better punter. Aaron Cepas just is not going to make the top 25 list, by the way.
And neither is a long snapper. Let's face it.
Rick
does a good job, but that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, if you're not doing it, you're not going to be employed very long. But long snappers to me are players that will never make my top 25. I would say.
Yeah, that's a good point because Rick's been a Pro Bowl player, and it's difficult if you're just saying. Everything comes down to definition. So it's a balancing act. Is Rick one of the top 25 players doing his job the best? Probably, but I can't put him on the list.
You know what else I can't do is name another long snapper in the league. Can anybody? I mean, who can? I don't know.
I only know Andrew DePaulo. I only know Andrew DePaulo because he's from Rutgers and he made the Pro Bowl. And Rick told me he was the best long snapper. That's the only reason I can name him. And that's the only reason.
We have John. Just an aside. We need to find out who is the best long snapper evaluator in the world, and we got to get him as a guest.
Well, I went to another long snapper. I figured Rick would know that the guy from Baltimore. Morgan Cox, I don't know if he might have retired. He was a big deal too. He was a big
we need to have someone on to break down every single aspect of long snapping and what makes a long snapper great and or the reason that you lose your long snapper chops and you need to be looking for another occupation. We will get that done for you here on Birds 365, we promise. Eddie Kracz. John mentioned this earlier. Our pal Eric Edholm from sports NFL.com had an article on overstated stories that are getting too much attention, stories that are not getting enough attention. And he said the fact that the Eagles lost both their offensive coordinators being a little overhyped, that it's not as big a deal as it is being made in some quarters. I love my guy, EE. Yeah, I think he's wrong about this one. I think it is a big deal with the Philadelphia Eagles this year. I think that the biggest aspect of it is the fact that we don't know how good a play caller Brian Johnson is going to be. We know Shane Steichen did a hell of a job last year. Is that something that from day one when camp opens up, we should be looking. I guess we can't even begin to judge till game starts. I might have to push it till week 1 of the regular season. You think seamless the transition between Steichen and Johnson as play calling goes?
Yeah, I don't think it's overrated at all. To me, it's one of those issues that should be concerning. You mentioned the play calling for Johnson. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more on field time for the Eagles this spring. Just to
what more field time? Are you nuts? John almost tore my head off hour number 1. Not changing with the Philadelphia Eagles. What do you mean allow more fans into practice? Not this team, the most secretive team in the National Football. CIA's got nothing on the Philadelphia Eagles. What are you kidding? You think they're going to do more? Of course they're going to do less.
Well, my thinking would be that you have a new play caller in Brian Johnson, and he's talked about the feel that Shane Steichen had for doing that job, and now he has to kind of come up with a feel for how the team operates and how it's performing. And I think more on-field time, getting to know the team and getting to see them execute would help him develop more of a feel going into training camp as far as how he's going to call plays. I mean, it certainly wouldn't hurt. I'm not talking about, adding, all this time on the field, but I would have liked to have seen a few more OTAs. They only had 6 of them, I think. So, I think you're allowed 9. I would have liked to have seen 9. I'd like to have seen a rookie mini
10.
Yeah. Why not? Why not add a couple more just to help for Brian Johnson, just to get to know this team? I know he's been around for 2 years, but he's been a quarterback coach. I know he's been in some of the different meetings, but still, you want to develop a feel like Shane Steichen had for what you have available, and I certainly think it would have helped him.
Eddie, were you not on that email chain? Practice activities equals injuries. No. No matter how much sense it makes, no matter how much time No. We're not putting any of our players at risk. Are you kidding me? That's the Philadelphia Eagle way, and they went to the Super Bowl last year. So keep ixnay on the practice, Eddie. You better not go down that road. Your time at practice will be cut even more so than it already is.
Yeah, I just think with new coaching, new coaches in place at different spots, the coordinators, of course, being the 2 biggest, but you have a couple, different coaches on defense. I mean, DJ Elliott, he has never coached in the NFL, right? He's a college guy, he's been with this team for just a couple weeks now. Certainly couldn't hurt. Last year, you can't argue with success. They stayed relatively healthy because of the practice schedule or non-practice schedule, or however you want to look at it. But they stayed relatively healthy, but they also had the same coaches in place from year 1 of Nick Sirianni to year 2. Now you have kind of tweaked the staff, and you can only learn so much from studying your guys on tape. You want to go out there and see them, what they can do in action on the field. And I know you're opening yourself up to injuries. We've seen guys get hurt. I think the Jets lost Chuck Clark, right? With a torn ACL during OTA. So you are opening yourself up to perhaps more injury, but you have to balance it. And if you're allowed 10 and you're only doing 6 OTAs, maybe you could somehow come to the middle and do 8, and just risk an extra 2 in hopes of getting your coaches a little bit more, acclimated with your personnel.
A wise man once told me, show me a good coach, I'll show you good players. Actually, Nick said that, but he's not the first to say it. That's why I'm not as concerned, and I love Shane Steichen at Kracz. I'm going to miss, not getting 17 F-bombs in 20 seconds. I love that guy to death. I think he's a great play caller, great feel for it. But, man, the Eagles are so good offensively. They lost Isaac Seumalo, but they got Cam Jurgens. They lost Miles Sanders, but they got a bunch of guys that could arguably even improve the position. Defensively, they not only lost the coordinator, as you brought in, if you were doing a defensive depth chart on the coaching staff, they lost 1, 2, and 3. They not only lost Gannon, they lost Denard Wilson because they didn't give him the job. And they lost Nick Rollis, who they interviewed to be a coordinator, left with Gannon. Those were the top 3 defensive coaches. They're all gone. Whereas you still have Brian Johnson here. You still have Kevin Patullo here. It's Nick's offense. And on top of that, you lost 5 defensive starters. You lost much more on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to proven talent than the offensive side of the ball. That's why I'm more concerned with the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, you're making my point. More on-field time. You're right. They lost both starting linebackers. They lost both starting safeties, and 3 key coaches. I mean, yeah, it's a concern that you're going to have to get on the same page, and I'm not sure you can wait until August to start doing that. I think it has to start now. Listen, we didn't see them. They were behind the scenes a lot this spring, but we were in there twice for an hour each time, if that. So, it's hard to judge what kind of work they got done in the meeting rooms and when they didn't let us in for these OTAs. So, maybe they got a lot done. Maybe they were comfortable with what they had. But to me, from the outside looking in, yeah, I think it would have helped to be on the field more because of, you're right. The defense is a concern. New coordinator, how's he going to play this? What's this defense going to look like? How is he going to utilize this personnel? The Eagles brought in a lot of new guys that all of a sudden they have to mesh, and can they do it in a short period of time, really 1 month in the summer before the season lifts off?
All right, Ed Kracz, will Milton Wright, not to be confused with Milton Williams, will Milton Wright be a Philadelphia Eagle?
I see the receiver from Purdue.
Yeah.
Yes. I know you posted about that last week, so I figured you had a ready-made opinion on whether Milton Wright should be a supplemental draft pick for the Eagles or not.
Listen, I think they'll put a bid in. It's kind of like the silent auction with this supplemental draft, right? You put your bid in and you wait to see, if you're the best bid, if you're the winning bid. I wouldn't put a first-round pick in them for him. I'm not even sure I'd put a second-round pick in him, but
I'd put in a 6th-round pick. That's where I'd
well,
start.
Listen.
Yeah, Johnny's not going. He's got to go 3rd round. He covets those first 2 day 2 picks.
Day three.
Yeah, he's going day 3. I could have guaranteed
4th round or
you that.
beyond, huh? Yeah, listen, I mean, he was pretty productive at Purdue. I mean, he put up good numbers. He has good size. I think he's 6'3", 195. Did the Eagles like what they have as undrafted guys? Again, I go back to Joseph Nada from Clemson. I mean, he's got similar size, good production at Clemson. I mean, maybe he's a guy that works his way up. And now Devin Allen, has this decision to make. He ran in the Grand Prix in New York on Saturday. He might qualify for the World Track Championships in Hungary, which is August 19th to the 27th, right in the middle of training camp. Devin Allen may not be on this roster once training camp hits. They may part ways because he still is all in on track and field.
Fourth fastest hurdle time in the world this year, by the way.
Yeah.
Kevin
Allen. I just wrote about it this morning. It'll be posted on SI. But yeah, he's a guy that I'm not sure he's going to be here. So you probably have an opening. And Milton Wright, if you really like what you see from him, why not put a 4th round bid in on him? You may not get it. There might be teams who think they need
I think
receiver more than the Eagles do, and someone will put a 3rd round bid in. But I would certainly throw my dice and hope I get come up craps or whatever you want to say there. But I would certainly put a bid in on Milton Wright. You could use help at the receiver spot still.
They need help. That's the only reason I'd leave. I don't know obviously I don't know what they think of him as a player.
Right.
That it all hinges on that. I mean, if everybody goes back, just the Eagles drafted Chris Carter back in the day. They gave up a 4th round pick for Chris Carter. It's a different generation, but kind of tells you that, obviously he was a high profile guy at the time, turned into a Hall of Fame player. I wouldn't count on that for Milton Wright. But I would say about Devin Allen, remember when they first signed Devin Allen and Devin said, I'm going to commit to football. And by the way, I agree with him. He's running the 4th best time in the world. Why the hell isn't he committing to track? I mean, why don't just pull the plug on Devin Allen?
Exactly.
Nicest kid in the world, but he's 28 years old. You can't do both, as you mentioned. He's got to fight to make this team. He's got to go to the what is it? The World Championships. There's so many different track meets, but
Yeah.
I mean, what are they doing with Devin Allen?
Well, they're giving him an opportunity. They like his traits, I guess.
Well, why wouldn't you? He can run. He
He
can
can
catch the
run, but
football.
if you're not going to
Um,
use him in the kick return game or the punt return game, I guess there is no such thing as a kickoff return game anymore.
Right.
But but if you're not going to use him, I'm surprised they didn't try him as a punt returner, given his speed and his ability to get go from 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds. I'm surprised, but you're right. I think Devin Allen is probably going to go, if he makes the team, and he has to go top 3, I think, at some event after the 4th of July, which I think he'll do a top 3 finish, and he'll be on this World Athletic Championship team that goes to Hungary. And then he has to decide, hey, am I going to spend the rest of the summer training to do well at this event, or am I going to try to make the 53-man roster? And you're right. If you're Devin Allen, you got to go with the track, right? That's what you're
I
known
would.
for. So
I mean, he's great. He's one of the best in the world. Here he's a long shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as it plays back to Milton Wright, now you have an opening on your 90-man roster. Do you want to bring in another receiver? Can you perhaps get in the Milton Wright? I think it's certainly something that bears watching. And I think the supplemental draft is July 11th, I believe.
11th, I believe.
Yeah, that's
scheduled.
So, we'll see where Milton Wright lands, but he's certainly a productive receiver from Purdue with size that could interest the Eagles.
And oh, by the way, the Eagles should do it today. They should release Devin Allen. Because what kind of percentage are we talking about him actually making the team and contributing and making it? It's so minuscule. Take the pressure off the young man. Just tell him you're cut. Don't make him decide whether he's going to go to track or come back to cut him now. Do you really believe another team's going to swoop in and sign him? He's been here. The only contact he has with the National Football League is Eagles. So if and when he decides after he finishes up with a track, no, this time I really mean it. This time I'm going to concentrate on football. He's going to come back to the Eagles anyway because they did him a solid by taking the hit and releasing him and saying, this is our decision that we're moving on from Devin Allen. You'd always mend that fence. So do the right thing. Go ahead and release the kid. Don't drag it on anymore. Don't make Ed Kracz have to continue to ask, what are they going to do with Devin Allen? Just release him. Let him go on.
The thing that I think he would have a legitimate chance to make this team as the 5th receiver. The Eagles are not deep at receiver. They're top heavy. They're great at the top. But they're very top heavy. 3 is Quez Watkins. 4, Olamide Zaccheaus. 5 is Britton Covey, who Ed knows is nicest kid in the world, but there's some limitations there. And then you start talking about the Greg Wards of the world and the Tyree Clevelands and the Joseph Nadas and the Jaden Hazelwoods. I mean, I think people don't know Devin Allen. He's not like Ronaldo Nehemiah, who just said, hey, I can run fast. He was a good receiver at Oregon playing football. He knows how to catch the football. He is a football player. Now, he took a lot of time off, but he knows how to play football. And there's an opportunity, which is why I kind of scratch my head and say, all right, I get it. If he stays with track, he's better at track. But this going back and forth, he's got a legit shot if he would commit to football, but it doesn't look like he's going to commit to football. So,
right. I mean, he's a 2-time Olympian, right? He ran in Rio de Janeiro. He ran in Tokyo. Now you got the Paris games coming up next summer. I mean, let's go all in there. Let's try to win try and get on the podium there if you're Devin Allen. That's what I'd be thinking. But listen, you talk about him being a good receiver. We saw him last year in preseason, right? Didn't he make that
touchdown,
55-yard touchdown catch from I forget who the quarterback was that threw it. But he flashed, and that's what kind of put him on the Eagles' radar and said, hey, this guy might be able to help us. Let's keep him on the practice squad. And that's what they did. And I don't know how much better he got from that year on the practice squad. I would assume that he did well enough to keep that job. So I don't think it's as simple as the Eagles saying, all right, let's cut him. I think you want to keep him probably until he's actually made that World Athletic Championship team to go to Hungary. And we'll know in the middle of July or early July. I think the event that he can qualify in is July 6th to the 9th out at the University of Oregon. So we'll know, by then whether he makes the team. And then if he does, then maybe you say, hey, listen, Devin, we love you. Go do your thing. If you want to come back and give it another shot, we'll be here for you. That would be the right thing to do. We'll see if the Eagles do that.
We shall see. I'd go ahead and do it right now, but that's me because I'm not a very nice guy. But Ed Kracz is. That's why we have him on every single week, or almost every single week. Eddie, looking forward to yours and John's rest of your top 25 list. Thanks for giving us a little content on the show during the slow to summer months, both when you hop on and with your list. What do you got planned for the rest of the week? Anything special?
Well,
going to the beach?
Yeah. I'm probably going to try to get down to that Jason Kelsey event on Wednesday at Sea Isle City. I don't think the weather's going to be the best, but I think I might try to get down there. It was a really fun time. I went down for his first one 2 years ago. I think him and Travis are going to be doing their New Heights podcast from there at the OD in Sea Isle City. Great cause that they're raising money for. Guest bartender. It's a really fun time. And if you can get down there, I would certainly recommend it. So I think I'm going to try to get down there, maybe take the family down, spend the day on the beach if it's nice, and then, filter up to the OD there, the Ocean Drive and Sea Isle, and watch it all play out. So that's nice. Probably on the radar. But my understanding, Jody, is you're going to be our tiebreaker vote in the top 25. Well, John and I, we submitted our rankings. We had a couple ties.
We had a couple dead heats. So we had to bring in a tiebreaker. So when Jody did his own list, so I said, well, let's use Jody's.
Which means I'm going to agree with 20 and disagree with the other, whoever had them ranked higher. So I'll apologize in advance for ticking off whichever one of you guys. my vote doesn't line up with. And no truth to the rumor that Ed Kracz is going hunting with Carson Wentz this week.
No.
At least if he's going to do it, he'll be smart enough not to put it on social media, unlike Carson Wentz, dope.
He's hunting for a beer with Jason Kelsey.
That's much better. Happier hunting. Much happier hunting for Ed Kracz.
Yeah.
Eddie, thanks, brother. We'll get you up again soon.
Thanks, Ed. SI.com/NFL/Eagles. You can see our top 25 every day and some Devin Allen stuff Ed wrote this morning.
And what do we got? Number 19 today, which means number 18 for John and Ed tomorrow. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We need to put a bow on this show.